The curious croppers from Clevedon. Tomatoes are what they do. Some of the tomatoes growing in their greenhouses are black like plums, some look like pleated skirts, some yellow with a fuzzy skin like a peach. Many are gnarly and they're striped and they're wrinkly and they are enormous. As Anthony Tringham says, the show-off in us wants to grow big show-off tomatoes. Some we grow because they're beautiful and some we grow because they are delicious. Sharing their journey as growers and what they've learnt along the way and how they use social media as a platform to engage with customers and the wider community. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the curious cropper, Anthony Tringham.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi everyone. I can't quite see you all from here, but I'm sure I've got some of my vegetable growing friends in the noisy table back there. Where's Kieran? Can't see him. Okay. Angela sends her apologies. She can't make it today. She got stuck in the hospital with Olivia, but there's a picture of us. And as you can see, we like tomatoes. The dog likes tomatoes and my daughter likes tomatoes. When Karen asked us to talk about how we use social media, Angela, that's my wife, said to me, "But you are a case study in how not to use social media." However, those of you who know us know that not necessarily understanding a subject has never stopped us talking about it. And so, with those caveats out of the way, here is how we would like to proceed. First, for those of you that don't know us, we'll give you a brief overview of what we do. Then we will talk about how we think our observations are applicable to the horticultural industry. And finally, we would like to give everyone some ideas on how we think the industry could promote itself on social media in a way that makes the industry look good. And when we say everybody, we don't mean your respective marketing departments. We're sure that you already have your own well-paid marketing team. So by everybody, we mean all of you. Everyone that works in this industry at an individual level. Even you, Simon Watson, it's time to get that Facebook account activated. Also, feel free to disagree with us. You know that we're contrary and we like to be challenged. Our company name is Curious Croppers. We started about 15 years ago when we realised that our small business with our crappy old greenhouses wasn't going to get us the production that we needed to compete with high-tech modern greenhouses. We needed to do something different, and we wanted it to be fun and interesting. When we started, we read a lot of books on marketing, and the essence of most of them was that to be noticed, you need to be number one in some area. It can be an obscure, totally niche area, or it can be mainstream. And this is because from a marketing point of view, once you create that incumbency, it's a strong position to hold. And you have a clear reason for existing in customers' minds. If customers can say something simple and clear about you, then you can easily exist in their minds. For example, look at Bostock Chicken. They are clearly the best premium chicken meat brand. They grow small flock, free-range, organic chickens underneath an apple orchard. How many more boxes could they tick? And the visual imagery, as you've probably seen, is beautiful. And amongst their consumers, when you mention free-range chickens, that's the name that comes up. Okay, we accept that this is an easy thing to describe, but it's not so easy to do. In order to become number one in a crowded area, there are a couple of options. Option one is you spend your lifetime living frugally, studying and accumulating knowledge. You work hard, you work your way to the top. And this is what we are trying to encourage our son Max to do. That's the hard way, but most of you know us. We needed a shortcut. And so, option two is to create a new category. Now you're talking our language. Then, by virtue of being the only one in this category, you've created an incumbency. Of course, people will copy you. For example, Brinks, the big chicken people, have got a Bostock chicken copy. But ideally, in the customer's mind, you have the advantage of being first. At Curious Croppers, we decided we wanted to be the #1 supplier of heirloom tomatoes to high-end restaurants. And look, there's one of our salads. Isn't it beautiful? So this category didn't exist, and we hadn't, in fact, ever grown any heirloom tomatoes before. Putting a seed from your friend's garden into your good horticultural greenhouse is the horticultural equivalent of unsafe sex. It's fun, but it could kill you. But what with psyllids destroying the market we used to have, we had nothing much to lose. It helped that we were in Auckland, we were close to many customers, and we had a farmers market to give us publicity. And Mark Zuckerberg had recently sent us a message saying, "Hi, Anthony and Angela, I've just invented this thing called Facebook. You should think about using it to talk about your story." And that was 15 years ago. There's always luck involved. And it didn't happen as quickly as we would have hoped. And we would like to acknowledge the support of NZ Hothouse over many years, who patiently continued to buy our excess cherry tomatoes until we were able to complete the move away to another style of tomatoes. And this also coincided with a chef-driven movement towards knowing who grew your produce, and a chef-driven desire to find and showcase more unusual vegetables. But our business probably wouldn't have succeeded without social media. Those of you who do follow us know that we like to post lots of pictures of tomatoes. We like to eat out a lot, ideally in places where they serve our tomatoes. We call it tax-deductible market research. Okay, this far, you can all reasonably say, so what? Anthony and Angela have built a lifestyle around selling tomatoes and posting pictures of themselves at dinner, and they're aided and abetted by Facebook and Instagram. How does this apply to the horticultural industry, and what do we think you all should be doing to advance the cause? Firstly, we think that everyone in the industry should be using social media to put positive messages into the heads of all New Zealanders, and, if you like, the rest of the world. We think it should be your job to take up residence in people's minds. Why is this worth the bother? Well, remember when we said you need to be the #1 something in order to take up residence in a headspace? We think there is a little piece of space in the public's mind that is not well colonised. Now, this little space in people's heads, we can either own or give to someone else. The someone else that will take this space is likely to be an adversary, someone who does not have our interests at heart, and possibly someone else who has an agenda. And once they are in, then they have first mover advantage. And if we want to evict them from people's heads, their ideas will be very hard to dislodge. Okay, how do we do this? You've probably read in her most recent editorial in Why to Kai, Charlotte Connolly expressed her frustration about how little understanding consumers have about pesticide use. She said her intelligent friends assume that unless something is organic, it will be heavily sprayed. And did anyone notice the Allbirds article in the July 6th Saturday Herald? In the article, the Allbirds creator, Tim Brown, argued that generic nation building or generic industry branding is a waste of time. He is very critical of campaigns such as the Woolmark Initiative. Quoting him, "No amount of telling someone that something is true will make them believe it. You may as well just take the money and burn it in a big bonfire." He then goes on to say, you need to create a story with a good connection to the consumer. We would also argue that you need to create a story that is very simple. I repeat, this has to be very clear and very simple. Andrew and I spend every Sunday at the Cleveland farmers markets talking to customers, and we have a good feel for what customers pay attention to and what they remember. And like Charlotte Connolly, we are surprised by the lack of consumer understanding of real-world horticultural production. For example, we were talking to someone at the market in July. She wondered whether we were growing the tomatoes outside in our home garden. It was July. It had rained all June, and we had just had 5 frosts. This illustrates the disconnect that we have with consumers, and is part of the conversation that we should all be having with people on social media. When people see cauliflowers for $8 each at the shops, it's because there aren't any cauliflowers being picked. It's not really because growers are getting paid a lot for their cauliflowers. Same with $10 avocados. This conversation drives us crazy. Avocados are $10 each because they're not in season. Okay, what sort of images can we use to reinforce our point? The sort of pictures that seem annoyingly everyday to us. Fields underwater, tractors stuck in mud, or hand harvesting potatoes because the harvesters can't get in. This could be part of our story. But again, it needs to be simple. Okay, people, here we are at the pitch. If you have listened this far, you may still be having a so what moment. So here are several ideas that we would like to propose on how the social media could collectively use social media in order to achieve our objective, which is to get into people's heads in a good way. And remember, we need to be number one in a good way. Here's our first idea. As you know, Hort NZ is working on a primary growth partnership. And this PGP has a strong agroecological aspect. We should be able to use this to create a really good New Zealand horticultural story. At our farm, we look at our entire ecosystem around our greenhouses and we enhance it so that we are growing and feeding the beneficial insects that we need to suppress insect pests. We do this on as many levels as we can find. We plant beneficial flowers, we trap rats and mice, we have native tree shelter belts everywhere. We admit it's too soon for us to be totally confident, but this system, it seems to be working. And our farm looks beautiful when everything is flowering. It's an easy story to explain, and our visitors leave with lots of pictures of pretty flowers, bumblebees, we also add puppies and kittens, and tomatoes. And the critical thing is, they leave with an understanding of how we control our insect pests, and we don't really talk about insecticides. It's simple, it explains a lot without going into detail, and it's very Instagrammable. Now, we're not experts on outdoor tree cropping or row cropping. That's up to you guys. However, we have seen a few examples where row crops have been interplanted with flowers to feed aphid predators. And in grapes, planting buckwheat, alyssum and phacelia in the rows seems to become quite normal. This method of crop protection looks beautiful. It explains a story very simply and looks fantastic on social media. If we wanted to, that could easily be our story. We could be known as the industry that uses flowers and bees and insects to keep our crops healthy. Or we could be known as the insect responsible for collapsing the insect ecosystem, as has happened in the European Union. So here's a typical Guardian article which talks about, among other things, farmers being responsible for killing insects. Whereas I think it would be nice if we had this sort of imagery. This is the garden outside of our place. It's filled with flowers and butterflies and beautiful things. We could also join in with a few other organisations that are already promoting our story. Organisations such as Eat NZ, whose mission is to make New Zealand the country that produces the finest food in the world. Or Garden to Table, which is an organisation that teaches children how to grow and eat food. So even if you are primarily an exporter, we think it is worth supporting New Zealand local concepts, the Agroecological Project, and working on backstories for our NZ story. Returning to Mr. Allbirds, they do the shoes, by the way, in case you haven't heard of them. Promotions need to tell an authentic story. Our PGP, the agroecology story, this fits our story beautifully. So to recap, we think that we need to remove the disconnect that consumers have with our farming systems. We think that we should all fill our farms with beautiful flowers, insects and bees, and then we could become known as the country that grows flowers and insects and not the country that is destroying them. And we could all talk about this on social media, and I think that would be a beautiful, simple story, and it would capture people's attention. So, how's that? You're welcome to disagree with me. I can't quite see from down there. I've got some frowns and some crossed arms. Or is it a simple, obvious idea and we're all going to support the PGP?
All right, any questions for Anthony, either through the microphones or on the app? I have to say, a grower of cranky and gorgeous tomatoes, it's been an insight into a world I know little about, but there is no question it is done with enthusiasm and done with love, and that I can appreciate. Actually, Anthony, why tomatoes?
Because no one else was doing these tomatoes, but also they do look really pretty, don't they? It's maybe slightly easier to make tomatoes look good than it is to make broccoli and cauliflower look good. Although you did see on one of our serve-overs, we did add a few of our friends' broccolis and pumpkins and things like that.
And your wife as well? It's an entirely family thing?
Oh, yes, no, she's the one that makes us look good. I tend to get a little bit carried away and she calms me down.
All right, well, if there are no questions on the app, any questions on the microphones, ladies and gentlemen, for Anthony? I have to say you will also find on social media that it is not surprising that there are just people who do not get that you will not be growing tomatoes outside in July. Media seems to attract comment from people like that all the time, he says rather ruefully. Any questions for Anthony? All right, thank you. Anthony Tringham, ladies and gentlemen.